Is this thing on? This is the final book review of the Christian Ethics series, as well as the final video of the Christian Ethics series. Again, I think I'm probably towards the end of the year. We'll dive a little bit more into ethics, but overall, I'm on the is framework of the is-ought debate, and can you derive an is from an ought? Can you derive an ought from an is? I'm definitely on the is side. I'm not necessarily always wanting to tell people what is the correct ought. However, I have found this delve into Christianity as relevant and fun, and I'm looking forward to my next series. But I'm going to finish with C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. What this book is, so C.S. Lewis has been the main author we've explored. We've explored one of his nonfiction works, then one of his fiction works. This one is technically a nonfiction work, but the concept originated when he was delivering early form podcasts. It was way before podcasts, where it was broadcasts on British the British broadcast channel in the 1960s or 1940s. Yeah, this book was published in 1952. So during the 1940s, he would have radio programs where he talked about Christian apologetics, essentially Christian apologetics, defending Christianity from a philosophical perspective. And so some of these were actually like him going over the transcripts and then compiling them into a book from those broadcasts, and then he also included more into the book than he did in the broadcast. So I believe there was 8 or so broadcasts that were included in the book, or 10 broadcasts included in the book, and then he included more essential elements of what is Christian morality in the book. And so it's a good book for any Christian who wants to understand the essentials of Christianity. That's what I consider this book to be, the essentials of Christianity. So I'll be going over some parts on the Substack, but I'm also going to be going over some parts in the video here. All right, first quote. You could be good for the mere sake of goodness. You can be bad for the mere sake of badness, but you cannot be bad for the mere sake of badness. You could do a kind action when you are not feeling kind, and when it gives you no pleasure, simply because kindness is right. But no one ever did a cruel action simply because cruelty is wrong, only because cruelty was pleasant or useful to them. In other words, badness cannot succeed even in being bad in the same way goodness is good. Goodness, so to speak, itself is bad. Goodness is, so to speak, itself, whereas badness is only spoiled goodness. So what he's getting at here is, when you do a misdeed, when you seek to harm others, or seek to harm yourself, or seek to do an action that is considered antisocial or an action that is considered considered non-ethical. Often the reasoning for it either is a gain for yourself, whether it be sort of an emotional gain, a material gain, a physical gain, but it also could be that you have sort of a wiring situation where you are actually attracted to doing those bad things, and it makes you feel pleasure in the moment. Very rarely do people do bad actions for the mere sake of doing, whereas people do good actions for the mere sake of doing good, even if they don't like doing good in the moment. Now, you could argue like a politician making a political decision that is generally disliked by a large number of people. They're making that decision because there's some kind of benefit to them, or they're making the decision because it's the right decision even though everyone's going to dislike it. But they're providing a rationality that there is some good there. And so what he's arguing here is that it's hard to argue that people seek to hurt others. People seek pain because they themselves want to feel pain. It's not how it works. It's usually there's some form of incentive that would actually benefit them doing the unethical behavior. Next quote. Every time you make a choice, you are turning the central part of you, the part of you that chooses, into something a little different from what it was before, and taking your life as a whole, with all your innumerable choices, all your life long, you are slowly turning this central thing either into a heavenly creature or a hellish creature, either into a creature that is in harmony with God, or with other creatures and with itself, or else into one that is in a state of war and in hatred with God and with its fellow creatures and with itself. To be the one kind of creature is heaven, that is, it is joy and peace and knowledge and power. To be the other means madness, horror, idiocy, rage, impotence, and eternal loneliness. Each of us, at each moment, is progressing to one state or the other. Fundamentally, this is what morality means. Sort of making conscious decisions to choose a path that includes other creation, includes other people, includes other things, includes things beyond ourselves. And so what Lewis is stipulating here is that within a Christian framework, if you are operatively working to become closer to God, sort of living in a more narrow path to what you perceive as good, sort of limiting your own forms of pride, ego, sin. Those are sort of what you are building towards as a human being, and building towards spiritually. And then when you're unable to do so, then you're turning away from God. But the thing is that all Christians do that, and all people do that. And it's just a constant battle for your own sort of spiritual identity. And the final quote: the more you obey your conscience, the more your conscience will demand of you, and your natural self, which is just thus being starved and hampered and worried at every turn, will get angrier and angrier. In the end, you will either give up trying to be good, or else become one of those people who, as they say, live for others, but always in a discontented, grumbling way. So this is sort of arguing for why Christianity is a stronger ethical system. The reason being is that it has a purpose to whatever time you do live with humility, whatever time you do live beyond just what serves you. And then the argument he's putting forth is that, sure, you can still come at the conclusion of what is ethical without a higher power, without transcendence, without a God. You could still find that conclusion. But when you're not doing that, when you're finding that conclusion without a higher power, oftentimes it's not always what you are spiritually thinking. And then it comes to the point where you're doing these things that are good, but it's weighing down on you because your conscious want, like what you yourself want, is not to do those good things. That is the issue. You yourself, without sort of a form of transcendence, will kind of say, why am I doing this too more frequently than sort of the Christian. The reason I'm doing this is for an internal relationship. And whether that internal relationship is possible is sort of where the atheists sort of have their stronger arguments, because they sort of demand a more strict logic into proving that eternal relationship is possible. But then why are you doing good? And does it lead to the question, why? Does it lead to the question, sort of, I want something, so I have to do good to stay part of a social group? And is that a form of transcendence? Now, you could argue that transcendence is not necessary. You could make that argument, but I think that it's an argument that makes it more difficult not to want what the self wants than having a transcendent reasoning. Anyways, these are just my thoughts. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be moving on to the next series, which is desire. And sort of, it'll be heavily influenced by evolutionary psychology, because that's sort of my favorite field of academic thought, basically for the last 4 years or so. It's been about evolutionary psychology and what answers it has in understanding human behavior. Anyways, thank you, and I will see you in the next one.